As a reader, the best reading experience in the world is when I sit down to read a book and I lose all sense of place and time. I forget that I have a life. I forget that I experience anything. I forget I exist as a person and I just get sucked completely into the story. As a reader, that is what I desire. And as a writer, I desire to give that experience to my readers. So, how does a writer pull a reader directly into the story and help them forget that they're reading and just exist within the world of the story? This is important for novelists, but it's also important for nonfiction writers, maybe even more important because we have a higher bar to draw people's interest. So, how can we suck readers completely into what we're trying to tell them and help them forget that they exist and just have them binge read our books? I'm Ruth Buchanan. I'm an author. I'm an author coach. I do these things myself in my writing life, and I also help other writers develop these skills. And I'm here today to talk through Deep Point of View, what it is, why it matters, where we can find some resources, and how we can work on this. So we're going to start by talking about Deep Point of View. What is it? Deep Point of View is a writing skill that allows us to draw readers so deeply into the story that they forget they're being told a story and they simply exist in their minds within the world of the story. This is important for novelists. This is important for narrative nonfiction writers. This is important for memoirists. Honestly, this is important for writers of any genre, but I'm going to be talking today specifically to writers who are heavily relying on storytelling within their writing. This could be hybrid memoir. This could be historical fiction, historical nonfiction, really any of these storytelling genres. Developing deep point of view is going to be critical. Now, readers may not know this term deep point of view, and they may not even know when they're experiencing it. But we who are on the other side of storytelling, we as the storytellers, knowing this term and how to use this skill in our writing is going to make a huge difference for the readers. Now, in order to use deep point of view in our writing, we have to understand how it works. So I'm going to give you 5 different approaches today to understand how deep point of view works. First of all, it doesn't matter if you're doing a single point of view or if you have multiple point of views, multiple narrators within your story. What is important is that for each narrator, you use deep point of view for each person. Now, when I write fiction, I, up to this point, have only ever done a single narrator. So each of my books is within the mindset of one narrative character. However, I've worked with writers, read lots of books where every chapter will be a different narrator, and there'll be either 2 narrators going back and forth, or there'll be up to 4 or 5 point of view characters. What is important is not whether we do single point of view or multi-point of view. What is important is that we use this deep point of view technique no matter whose point of view the story is being told in. It also doesn't matter if you're doing first person or third person. First person is when the character is narrating with I pronouns. I opened my eyes that morning and looked up at the ceiling, my stomach filled with dread, wondering what was I going to do. Or third person, which is he, she. Clara opened her eyes, her stomach filled with dread. She looked up at the ceiling at her room. What was she going to do? Doesn't matter if you're doing first or third person. Doesn't matter if you're doing past tense or present tense verbs. Deep point of view can be done in any of those situations. So what we're trying to do here is not, however, have a universal narrator. If you read a lot of the classics like Charles Dickens and Jane Austen, the classics from the Western canon from the 18th, 19th, and 20th century, a lot of these are written in what we would call universal narrator, where the storyteller is their own voice and they're telling the readers that they're telling a story. Jane Austen is famous for this. She'll say, "And now, dear reader, let us turn to Hertfordshire and let us look into the home of this family where mother is sitting on the couch and the daughters are gathered around drinking tea." So that creates narrative distance. You're aware you're being told a story. You know there's the voice of a storyteller, and they're directing you to look here and there. What we're trying to do is collapse that distance so the reader feels like they're in the room in Hertfordshire with mom and the girls, and there's no other voices speaking. They're just a fly on the wall within the world of the scene. So we want to choose a character within our scene who's giving us that point of view. So we don't have a universal narrator directing us and telling us things. We are seeing the scene through the point of view of a single narrator within the scene. That could be the same narrator through the whole book. That's what I have tended to do in my books up to this point. Or it could be a different narrator per chapter. A lot of romance writing, romantic comedies right now has the point of view of the woman and the point of view of the man. A lot of YA does this right now with shifting point of views where the characters are not even together for a lot of the book. And that's fine. Whoever we're with in the scene, we should be in their head, not being told what they're doing and thinking, but actually experience it alongside them. And we use deep point of view to develop that technique. This comes out in the way we write our dialogue. We want to use way more dialogue beats than we do dialogue tags. Now, dialogue tags, the dialogue is anything we put in quotation marks. It's the characters speaking back and forth, the people in our scene speaking back and forth. So a tag would be to add the name of the person saying it plus a word like said. Go to your room, Mom said. That's a tag. We're tagging the dialogue with who's speaking. Now, in reality, think about the way we actually experience people talking to us and around us, right? If my mom says to me, go to your room, that would actually surprise me considering the phase in life where I am right now. But if my mom said to me, go to your room, what I'm taking in is what she's saying and what she's doing. So I can add what's called a story beat. Now that word beat comes from the world of script writing and theater, where we want to create a beat of silence in the dialogue or in the script, so we give the character something to do. So if I were writing beats, I would say, go to your room. Mom slammed her hands down on the table. I may even put that beat before the dialogue. Mom slammed her hands down on the table. Go to your room. We don't have to say Mom said because we have quotation marks around it. We know they're saying it. The quotation marks signal that to the reader. So instead, we can give a physical beat. You don't have to put tags and beats on every piece of dialogue, okay? There's a lot I could say here about dialogue. We start a new paragraph every time the speaker changes. So if there's a quick back and forth between two characters, we don't have to tag or beat every single exchange. The reader can keep up. But if we are going to attach something to our dialogue to make it clear to the reader who's speaking, we want to use more beats than we do tags. And if we do use tags, use the tag said. Try to eliminate the use of more creative tags like exclaimed or interrupted or whispered or whatever. Said almost disappears to the reader. So if you do use tags, you said over all these other more creative tags, but try to use more beats. There are writers who will say, oh, I never use tags. They pride themselves on this. I only ever use beats. In reality, most writers these days use a mix of beats and tags, but to collapse that narrative distance and to put them within the scene, prefer beats over tags with your dialogue. Another way to collapse the distance, the storytelling distance, is to show rather than tell. Again, there will be some writers, some writing coaches who will say you should always show the action, never tell the action. I always steer away from that word always because there are moments when you don't have time or you don't need to show. We just need to get quickly to the action. So we will say, Mom stormed into the room looking incredibly furious. Sure, I'm telling you, she looks incredibly furious. But if the point is the action that's about to unfold and we want to get quickly to the action, we can collapse the amount of time it takes to get to what Mom's about to do by telling. But for the most part, we want to show these things. This is especially true with how we show what the characters are feeling. So think about how you experience life as a human being. We can, for the most part, most of us can read how others are thinking and feeling by reading their body language, by reading their tone of voice and those sorts of things. So I can look at someone's exterior and think, he looks angry. And the way I can tell is what's going on with his face and his body. His back is tense. His muscles are hunched, or his shoulders are hunched. His eyebrows are drawn into a V, right? So if I'm within the point of view of a certain character and someone comes into the room and I want to show that they're angry, I'll say, Sorsha looked up from her schoolwork. Her teacher hunched over her, eyebrows drawn into a V. I'm showing you through the teacher's body language, and I'm showing you through Sorsha's point of view. She looked up and he's hunched over her, eyebrows drawn into a V. You see how that puts us in Sorsha's experience? And I'm not telling the teacher loomed over Sorsha looking angry. I'm giving the reader something to do, just like Sorsha can interpret what all this body language means, so can the reader. This deepens their engagement and makes them feel like they're experiencing what Sorsha is experiencing. So we want to show, overtell. So if Sorsha is reading another character, we're giving their externals. Now, here's a pro tip. If we want readers to know what Sorsha is thinking and feeling, we show that, but we show it with internals if Sorsha is our deep point of view character. So Sorsha looks up from her paper, her teacher's hunched over her, eyebrows drawn into a V. Now, if I want readers to know how Sorsha experiences this, I give an internal sensation because we're inside her point of view. So I would say her stomach dropped. I'm not talking about what's going on with her face or what she looks like, because Sorsha is not outside her body looking at herself. She's inside experiencing this. So whoever your deep point of view character is, you give their internals to help the readers experience the scene. And whatever they're looking at, you give the externals to help the readers experience the scene. This collapses the narrative distance. We also want to eliminate distance words. Now, the great news is if you start doing these things like using beats over tags and showing over telling, for the most part, you're automatically going to eliminate some of the distance words, but that's not always the case. But the way we eliminate distance words is to remember there are certain storytelling words we use and we rely on when we're telling a story that are subtle signals and reminders to the reader that they're being told a story. For example, if I say Sorsha's stomach felt heavy, when I say she felt a certain way, you're being reminded that you're being told a story. Instead of saying Sorsha's stomach dropped. Instead of saying Sorsha felt cold, we say she shivered, right? Words like think and feel and imagine. These are narrative distance words. They're words that Jane Austen would have used to say, and now, dear reader, let us turn to Hertfordshire. They're reminders that you're being told a story. So instead of saying Sorsha imagined what her life would be like if she had a wonderful teacher instead of a bully. Instead of doing that, we can just directly deliver her thoughts by saying, what might life be like if she had a regular, supportive teacher rather than a bully? We know that that's a wonder. We know that that's imagination. We don't have to use words like wondered and imagined. So eliminate distance words. You can actually, when this video is over, you can run a search online about narrative distance words and find a whole list of them. And it may feel nitpicky if you are new to this, but I would say all of these things add up. All of these things snowball. And if you have had a reading experience where you got sucked completely into the story, it could just be the nature of the events. It could be the nature of the story itself. All of us have storytelling catnip that just completely drives us wild, and we love it so much, and we forget all sense of time and place when we read those kinds of stories. But when a writer is able to take a type of story that interests you and collapse the narrative distance and pull you deeply into it, I mean, it's lights out, it's game over. And the same thing is true with stories that I'm like, this isn't usually my type. And the next thing I know, it's like I got on a slip and slide and I read the whole thing in 2 sittings. I'm like, how did that happen? Usually it's because the author has become very skilled in pulling the reader all the way through into the experience. And so all of these things like beats over tags, showing over telling, eliminating narrative distance words, all of these things contribute to that deep point of view experience. The final way to understand this and to maybe to get at this is to say, if I want to develop deep point of view, I want to take myself out of the role of movie director. This is extremely hard if you've done scene writing and script writing or playwriting or anything like that, where that is the role of the writer to make the audience look here, look there. Instead, I want you to take yourself out of the story completely. Yes, you are writing the story, but you don't exist within the world that you're creating. You are not the movie director telling the reader, look here, look there. The way we direct the reader in deep point of view is much more subtle. We have to enter into our deep point of view character, whoever is narrating that scene for us, and we have to have her look at it. And if she sees it, the reader gets to see it. If she doesn't see it, the reader doesn't get to see it. And that is where things get tricky, but also very exciting, because you can hide things from your readers if the character doesn't know it. The character may not suspect that they're missing something, but you can have the reader suspect it. For example, I'm in my office right now. There's a closet. You can't see it, but there's a closet over there in the corner. Let's imagine that there's someone hiding in my closet. I don't know it, because within the world that we've created, I'm your narrative character. Let's say the narrations are going back and forth. And let's say in the last chapter, someone else was narrating the chapter. So they're the reason that we know there's someone hiding in the closet. Maybe they know, or maybe they're the person in the closet. Doesn't matter. But now we've switched to a new point of view, and the character we're with has entered the room all unaware that there's someone hiding in the closet. So let's say my character sits down, is looking at the computer screen, and they hear a thunk. The reader's going to know what that thunk is. The character has to think, what was that? Where did that sound come from? Not they heard a thunk coming from the closet or whatever. So then they're like, I think that came from the closet. And they turn and look, and they consider going over there. Do you see how you've created so much suspense by the character not knowing? So you can limit with deep point of view what the character knows, and still have plenty of room to let the reader know things that you as the storyteller would like them to know. So you are not a movie director. You are not sitting in the corner with the reader saying, reader, look over there, reader, look over there. It's much more complicated than that, but much more fun to collapse that narrative distance and let the reader feel like they alone are the fly on the wall experiencing the story. So that's how deep point of view works. This is a beginning explainer. This is not everything you need to know about deep point of view. It is a beginning explainer for how you can begin to develop deep point of view in your narrative writing. Here's why this matters. Readers are changing. People change. Different eras call for different things. Skills change, and skill sets change. So we are not practicing medicine the same way we were in the 18th and 19th and 20th centuries. Thank goodness no one stuck a leech on me lately to try to cure me from something. We're no longer doing bloodletting. We're not doing lobotomies anymore. And just as medical science has developed, so storytelling skills have developed. We have learned things about storytelling over the decades and over the centuries, especially when it comes to novels. Novels are called novels because at one point they were new. Novel literally means new. So it was a novel way to deliver storytelling. So the early novelists were beginning the development of skill. So it's no use asking, why could those authors get away with it and I can't? That's not the right way to look at this. Instead, you're saying, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. Storytelling has developed. Our understanding of storytelling has developed, and therefore we have built more skills around it. The second reason why this matters is that readers are incredibly distracted. The amount of media that we have access to at all times is staggering. You know, there are these jokes online about medieval peasants, like imagining, I would love, the medieval mind could not comprehend a Dorito, all the flavors, the flavor profile of a Dorito. You know, that we make these jokes, but it's true. Writers of different eras were dealing with readers who did not have an onslaught of attention-grabbing media coming at them at all times. Reading is a slow process, and it's a marinating process. And a lot of readers now, to save money, usually will download books on their phones. They're listening to audiobooks while they're doing other things. They're just one notification away from being distracted from your story. So it is even more important to me as a storyteller to think, I'm going to put them in a chokehold from page 1 to the point that they don't even notice notifications coming in because they have forgotten their life exists. And honestly, this is what readers want. As much media as we have coming at us, we want, one of the reasons we come back to stories and storytelling over and over is we want an escape. We want the fantasy. We want to be immersed in another world. But when a writer doesn't do a good job of immersing us, it's easy to click away to a notification. So this is what readers want. Readers want to be fully engaged in the story. They want to be fully immersed. They want to forget they exist as a person, and we can give it to them. So 2 resources that can help you develop some of the skills that I talked about earlier when we talked about those 5 ways to kind of get into this deep point of view. 2 resources that I recommend to most writers that I work with. You can buy them online, and these are not the only resources, maybe not even the best resources out there, but these are 2 that I use and a lot of the writers I've worked with have found helpful. The first is a little workbook called Rivet Your Readers with Deep Point of View by Jill Elizabeth Nelson. Her little explainers in the chapters are so clear, even though sometimes I read the example she gives and I go, ooh, I wouldn't do it that way. What I like about her is that she'll immediately say, now that might not be the way you would do it. So then she has like little worksheets at the end of each little chapter where you can practice developing deep point of view. So her explanations are super clear. It's a very affordable resource. I love it. The second one that I recommend all the time is part of the Writer's Thesaurus series by Ackerman and Puglisi. It is the Emotion Thesaurus. I have the original. There's now an updated and expanded version out, which I need to get. So when you order it, order the updated and expanded Emotion Thesaurus. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful tool. It works a lot like a regular thesaurus, but you look up the emotion, and what they do is give you internal sensations for that emotion, external clues for that emotion, and lots of other resources around it. So I recommend using these 2 together if you're new to deep point of view or if you would like to get better at this skill. If you want to talk about this further and how it can apply to your story, your book, and your writing life, I can help. I am a writer. I'm also a writing coach. And right now I'm primarily engaging through Instagram. So if you go find me on Instagram at Ruth M. Buchanan, send me a direct message, tell me what you're working on. And I would love to come alongside and help you apply these skills, particularly right now if you're working in narrative nonfiction or in the nonfiction world. I think novelists learn this in the course of their writing experience, but I think there's a gap for a lot of nonfiction writers in how this can strengthen and apply to their nonfiction writing. And if you can close that gap, you will stand out. Your nonfiction book will stand out because so few nonfiction writers do this naturally. And it doesn't occur to many of them to study these storytelling techniques the same way it occurs to novelists. So if you are writing nonfiction, especially, come over, check out all my free resources on Instagram, obviously, but send me a direct message over there. Let me know what you're working on, and we can set up a time to talk about how we can help you apply these skills of deep point of view to help pull readers deeply into your book and into your story and not let them kind of come up for air until the last page. All right, I'll see you all over there.